A little more pressure in these tires. Since I gotta push it now. Hey, this is David with Hagerty, and as promised, we're back with our Mustang for the second episode, and our goal today is to make this thing run. Now, first time, just pulling it out, we tried to get some fire, but we have no spark. We're gonna fix that today. Get started with the ignition side of things, so just gotta get after it. All right, so as I go through and take the ignition stuff off and any other parts that I'm going to replace here, it's a little more in-depth thought process of just yanking parts and throwing them in the ditch and putting new ones on. As I take out the old ones, I am looking at them to understand what the condition is. Since we don't have any background as far as why this was parked, all those types of things, or what it was doing when it was parked last. I'm kind of looking at that. So here's the first thing I see when I pull the plugs out. The plugs themselves aren't horrible, but it was definitely running really rich. So with the black plug. I didn't see anything major as far as like on the ignition wires. I am going to replace them anyway, but I'm not finding one that is shorted out or anything that would lead me to problems. I'm gonna fix whatever this is. Just going to the battery. It can be plugged down there. This is just... Well, pull the radiator cap, and the radiator is at least really low. And there was indication on the trailer that antifreeze had been leaking. And I just want to see where it might be pouring out at. So I'm just going to take some tap water, put in the radiator, just to, again, understand where it's at before I pull a hose and any of that stuff too, because it's hard to check it when it already has a leak because the hose is off. So first off, we'll figure out how low it is. There's no indication on the plugs that it was, it's got a blown head gasket or anything, because there's nothing white on the plugs. They're completely black. In fact, if anything, it's got a fuel leak into things. We'll let that settle in and see what we have. Because looking at the top of this radiator, it's got some, kind of some copper corrosion. That's the green stuff. So I'm curious if it has a leak somewhere along the lines of a fin or something like that. And since there are no radiator shops available in town any longer, I can't go have it pressure tested easily. It appears that we don't have a gushing problem with our cooling system, so I have topped off right to the top. We'll see what it looks like from the bottom if it's got a slow leak somewhere. But I do want to change the oil before I start this 100%, so I'm going to get it up in the air, get a fresh filter on it, some new oil, probably wipe down some areas that may have leaked here or there, but let's see what it looks like. So looking at the bottom of this, we have a lot of oil. A lot of oil. I've seen worse. On this bottom side of the engine, But looking at it, like anything, you look at the highest point is where it's leaking from, and then you probably have some leaks in between. But between the pan and the carburetor, really two main seals. You have your valve covers. Your head gaskets typically don't ever leak oil. Water, yes, but not oil. And then you have your valve or your oil pan gasket. So in this case, given that I have oil all the way up top, you know, our valve covers are leaking, which isn't to be not expected. And now lots a lot of this, I would say, especially from the engine block side of it. Now, this is definitely transmission fluid leaking. Again, not a big surprise, only because your pan gasket, again, tends to have leak issues. Older gaskets were cork, that's porous, and they seep. So this may even be up a little further too, out of the shifter. The oil is finishing its dripping process, so I'm going to say we're out of oil in the pan. That is drained. I need to get a filter wrench, get that filter off, and find a new oil filter. Get that in, put the plug back in, drop it down, and start putting stuff back on it instead of off. Okay, so here's a quick tech tip on a battery. All right, now there's positive and negative. When you take off, when you're removing, let's say this is hooked up and I need to disconnect my battery. Leave the positive for last, disconnect the negative. The reason being is I can take the negative and I can bounce it off the body all day long, it doesn't matter. However, if I do the same thing with the positive, when the negative is hooked up, I'm gonna get a pretty good surprise of an arc. So if you do the negative first, pop that off, boom, negative's off. Now, with my positive, I can lay this against the battery all day long because this side's not connected anymore. Just a little way to avoid problems, we'll put it that way. I have my battery connected. Now, some of you are going to say, hey, that's a little quick, you're not done. You're 100% correct. I'm going to be taking that negative on and off a couple times. So my point is, I have fresh oil in now. I'm going to put some fuel in the gas tank. And then I want to, basically I'm going to spin the engine over without the plugs in because it's a little easier because you're not fighting compression. So I'm going to spin that over and I'm going to check for oil pressure. Now, the problem I have with this particular car is it just has an idiot light. So it does not have a gauge. It's just going to tell me no oil pressure, which really doesn't tell you anything other than it's too late. So what I can do is I can take a separate oil pressure gauge, a mechanical oil pressure gauge, and take out the sending unit and thread it in and then sit here with an oil pressure gauge and watch that oil pressure come up. Now, for the most part, not everybody's going to have that. So the easier way or another way, you can't get a pressure number, but what you can find out is if you're getting oil, and that's by either looking down through holes in the valve cover, which in this one has a baffle, so I can't do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this valve cover off. I'm going to spin the motor until I get some oil coming up through the push rods onto the rockers. That'll tell me at least that the oil pump is sufficient to get oil to the top of the motor, which is what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to go there, but first I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put some gas in the tank because while I'm spinning the motor over, the mechanical fuel pump is turning or moving, so I may as well have fuel back there trying to prime the system. And obviously I need something here or I'm gonna have a lot of fuel where I don't want it. So I have a fresh fuel filter. I'm gonna put that in there. Now, I went and bought 2 of these at the same time. Reason being is I don't know what's in the tank, but I can see what's in the tank when it goes through this filter because it's semi-clear and it's right up on top and I can change it out. So I may have to change this multiple times before I'm comfortable with crap not being in the tank anymore. So it is what it is without dropping the tank and flushing it out. So that. Fuel. Okay, so I went through and did a kind of a quick job of cleaning things out. One's a little better than the other, but that's okay. And again, like I said, I don't want to put them through the parts cleaner because I don't want to lose my paint. So I am going to put just a little bit of RTV on the valve cover side, and then my gasket has a pretty good seal on that side, so we should be good. I've also already checked them too to make sure they're flat to the head. As you see, I have all my plugs are in, they're tightened down. I need to move to my spark plug wires, but before I do that, I want to get the fresh stuff on the distributor. So that involves a condenser, a set of points, and of course, rotor and a cap. So we will get that prepped, and then the biggest thing there is getting your point gap set right. The manual says 17, so we're going to set that there, and we'll see how it goes. We have all of our wires are run, the coil's back in, fresh coil, we have fresh points, condenser, cap, rotor, wires, plugs, battery, even lines to the starter, so we should be able to get no problem there. And we have fuel coming up into the filter. I just checked down through the carburetor and I have fuel coming in here from the squirter standpoint. So without some other major issue, I should have spark. I did not check it, but and I'm going to check it this way over here at the key. So if everything's right with the world today. All right. Good. Would you look at that? Imagine that. Don't take the distributor out. Work perfect. I can't get out. Yes. Victory. Victory is ours. I don't know about you, but I'm as happy as a puppy with 2 Peters because that's cool. This old girl's running. The choke is coming off. Heck yes. I'll have to fancy those up a little bit, but what the heck. Oh, Cam is going to be impressed. You know, I guess now we got to tackle the cooling. Not bad.